Hello, all you hardcore boxing fans out there. How you doing? It's Russ here from Porky's Corner, the biggest gob in sport. We say the things on here that nobody dares say. We're up to Terry's Take 108. I hope you enjoy it. Here we go.
Right name is well known. What's that? You smart. You got the food. No longer speaking English, speaking Spanish, and then interpreter.
They can never lose the WBC title, no matter what weight class they go.
Huh?
Michelle Lomachenko.
They can never lose it, unless they lose it.
No, they can win. They can't lose. If they win a fight, they can become undisputed, but they can never lose it.
No. We gotta talk to Al. Top Rank got some shit going on. Matter of fact, boxing on some bullshit.
Welcome back to the number one podcast in the sport where we're off back to Saudi for supposedly the greatest fight card of all time, although I don't. Having said that, it is a really good card. And I think for this era, coming out the post Mayweather era of boxing, I think this is as good as it's going to get. So let's not throw rocks at the card, because as boxing fans, we've wanted cards like this, haven't we? Where you can watch from the first fight. I know the first fight might be Brad Rare, but it is what it is. How did Brad Rare end up on this card? Now, I'm not saying he's a bad fighter, but of all the people to expect on this card, you're like, how? You know, when you do a fantasy team, don't you? And the first thing you do is you get like 3 strikers up, right? Or maybe 2 strikers and a high scoring midfielder, whichever way you want to slice it. And then you probably get about 6 players in, and you're like, oh, this is going to get rough. And then with the last bit of money you have, you've got to pick a second keeper, right? And it's normally someone like Artur Boric or Asmir Begovic or Scott Carson, right? And that's what you're left with. Like Brad Rare is kind of the Scott Carson of this card, where it's like, oh mate, we got 50 grand left. Who's gonna come out to side for 50 grand? And someone's just gone, right, just put Brad in there. He needs a few quid. But having said that, there's no shot to Brad. At least he gets the chance to make a memory. Like, look at the guys he's gonna be mixing. Like, fair play to him. He got on there, and now it's up to him to make a name for himself. But I was kind of saying that in jest, because it's like, how did Brad Rare end up there? And no one knows who he's fighting. I don't even know who Constantino Nungu is, whatever the hell he is. But the real reason we're here is the rematch between Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. Now, my own view, I don't see why we need a rematch. Like, that's just fans being greedy, right? And this is what I mean about boxing fans talking out both sides of their mouth. We talk about the belts being tied up for too long and that no one gets to fight for a world title. And it sabotages careers. And a great example of a career that was ruined, that ever getting to fight for a world title, Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce was in place for such a long time to fight. I think it would have been Usyk who'd have fought. And then he almost got delirious from being bored and was just like, yeah, I'll fight Zhang. Why not? And then it just unraveled for him. That unraveling could have happened in a far bigger fight for a world title.
No, that unravelling was done by Sam Jones and Adam Morley, trying to keep Bricktop and Eddie Hills happy. That's what they were doing. Joyce were parked up. All he had to do was force the issue with the WBO when he were undefeated for the main fight for the title, but he couldn't do it, could he? Do you know what I mean? Because his advisors were stuck up, all the promoters, pop, pop, bang. Human monitor lizards.
Well, it may not have happened, but this is why it's very hard sometimes to listen to boxing fans, because boxing fans will tell you they want the belts to move around so people get opportunity, and then they'll go, no, those need to rematch again. No, they don't. Just get rid of the belts. I don't mind them rematching, get rid of the belts. But fans want to talk about both sides of their mouths. That's the thing that I have against this fight, is that it's just delayed the belts getting spread out again. Right? That's all. Undisputed is done now. This rematch is just an ego thing, it's a money thing. It's everyone just having their noses in the trough. That's my opinion on it from a business perspective. I don't see what it does for the sport. We're not crowning a new superstar as a result of that fight. So I'm not overly excited or impressed by that. But having said that, the interesting question is, who wins this time? And my own view is, I think the fight's closer. And I don't know who suffered more from the first fight, Beterbiev or Bivol. So when I watched that fight, it looked like Beterbiev had slowed down. Like the stuff that Beterbiev would just do instinctively, that he wasn't doing against Bivol. And I'm not buying into the thing that Bivol didn't let him. He did. There were times that Bivol couldn't move. He was like, my legs ain't letting me move right now. And Beterbiev wasn't throwing the shots he would have thrown against someone like an Anthony Yarde, where he'd throw 8 shots. It was just kind of 4, have a breather. And I was like, is that the age kicking in now? Are you really that middle-aged guy now? Are you now just relying on being heavy-handed as opposed to being quite an active fighter? Because I always thought that between Bivol and Beterbiev is about who could let their work rate dominate. And it doesn't look like Beterbiev really wanted to do that in the first fight. And I'm saying this, just based on what I remember at the time and what I recorded at the time. So I would say, if Bivol can hold it together, I think the punches he threw in the first fight, if they can come through in the second fight, he might find he's hitting older Beterbiev. But the flip side of that is those punches Beterbiev hit Bivol with took a lot out of it. Is there enough recovery time? Because in those situations, yes, you can look good in the ring. You can look good, you can look interested, and you can look like, I can still box. But how much did that take out? Were you into that reservoir? Did you have to overcome things you're not used to overcoming in order to put in that kind of performance and still lose? Because your body's like, we did all of that for nothing. That's going to be the hard bit to overcome. We can talk tactics. This isn't about tactics because the two men know each other and they're not going to do anything different this time. It's literally going to turn on about 10 to 20 shots in a whole fight. And it's whether those 10 to 20 shots connect that will determine it. So there were a couple of times where if Beterbiev had doubled up the left hook to the body, I think he would have dropped Bivol because they looked hurtful shots. So you could see the ribs sinking in. You can't take many of those. I don't care what anyone tells you. You can't take that many of those. But then there were times where Beterbiev was getting hit with like 4 straight shots from Bivol. 4 straight shots and then finish it off with just a nasty straight right to the body. And you could see Beterbiev was like, oh, he hits harder than I thought. So both of them have a way of looking at it. But here's why I think Beterbiev has still got it. Because rematches tend to follow a similar flow to the first fight. The big difference is there were no surprise factors. Your speed isn't a surprise anymore. Your movement's not a surprise anymore. You know what I mean? And vice versa. Nothing that Beterbiev does will surprise Bivol, and nothing that Bivol does will surprise Beterbiev. So now it's really about imposing who you are in the ring. This is just really imposing your will. And it's about, can Artur Beterbiev march forward? And I think he will. Can he march forward behind heavy artillery and just not let Bivol get set? So every step that Bivol takes backwards, can Beterbiev take one forward? Has he got that in his legs? I wasn't at 40. Has he got that in his legs? And that's the... If his legs hold up, like if you showed his training stats and he hadn't aged from a training perspective, I'd make him the comfortable favorite. But that's the big if. I'm going to back Beterbiev because I always back the winner in the rematch, right? It's how the game goes. Now, there's a chance that Bivol might switch up his tactics and look to skirt around the perimeter of the ring. But let's remember, that was probably the plan in the first fight. So there's going to be nothing new, nothing different. So I'd back Beterbiev to win. And I think if he doesn't stop him, he's going to drop Bivol. And the reason I say I just think those body shots take a lot longer to recover from than people want to talk about. And I always think back to Fraser Clark versus Fabio Wardley. If you remember what I said then, I said these guys don't want to see each other for at least a year. Go away, go and have some easier fights, go and just let the body heal and reset, because you can't go from savage camp to savage camp. Both of these men are over 30, so go from savage camp to savage camp is going to be ridiculous. I'm hoping, because they come from that kind of Russian Soviet system, hopefully that recovery's been baked into their prep so that physically they're fresh. But the first fight took a lot out of both of them. I think probably a bit more out of Bivol because he's not naturally that big compared to his peers. So we'll see. But that's where I put it. I think Beterbiev's got to up his work rate. But once he ups his work rate, his two-handed power is hard to deal with because it just interrupts everything you do. And if he can keep punching, and this is going to be another key difference, is he brave enough to let his hands go where Bivol lets his hands go? Because if he is, there are so many openings there. There's a nice overhand right that will always be there for him if he's got the courage to just let it go. How much is dip at the hips and just fire it straight at Bivol and he'll drop it? That's my opinion. And if I'm Beterbiev now, I understand what this game is, and people understand that I'm getting old. They might want the belt to come off me so that you can get Bivol versus Buatsi. So what I definitely need are a couple of knockdowns, just to make sure it's impossible for the judges to shaft me. See, that would be my take and my assessment on it. So what's really interesting is, and this is more thinking about what happens after the fight. If Beterbiev does win, I have heard that he will probably move up, and it might be the Berdujak fight he goes for. That might be what he does next. So let's see what happens, because if you're Bivol and you lose this one, what do you do next? Once the belts are vacated, do you fight for one of the belts? Do you fight Canelo in a rematch for one of the belts? I don't know. Now would be a good time to do it because I don't think there are any real monsters at light heavyweight at the moment that would be a threat to Bivol. I think he could probably jump in with Canelo, make his money, and then let everyone else kind of fight over the scraps. But yeah, this is the problem with a fight like this. It kind of leads nowhere. It means like in terms of the division, this leads absolutely nowhere. Beterbiev will go up to cruiserweight, go and test himself against Berdujak. If it works, awesome. That's another title in another weight class. If it doesn't work, he dare to be great, as people like to say. As for Bivol, I still believe he could make 168. But what is there for him at 168 that Canelo hasn't cleaned out already? So it's just really a Canelo fight left for him. And then just looking at his options in terms of retirement. But something we should touch on is what a massive victory for the Soviet system. If you look, the most dominant heavyweight we've got right now, Ukrainian, came up under that Soviet system. Light heavyweight, two guys that came up under that Soviet system. And you can go down the list, man. You got guys like Madrimov. You've had guys like even Alexander Govorchik from that same system, and he's still going. Loma. You go through it, and there are so many guys who came through that Soviet system, right? And you think back and go, what is it about that system? And I think there are two things that make them unique. Number one is toughness. They all just seem hard as nails. Like, they don't really get splattered, do they? They might get dropped with a body shot, but you don't really see them knocked out cold, generally speaking. They tend to navigate those things pretty well. And then the second thing is work rate. They just throw more punches than most other boxing systems. And I'm surprised that in this country we haven't learned that. You throw more punches, but you don't load up. You just extend. In this country, we throw short punches, then we just add loads of muscle to make short punches just even heavier, right? When you could get the same effect by just extending and adding a bit more speed without the muscle gain and the associating kind of stamina issues that come with it. But I do, like I said, massive win for the Soviet system. If you're a coach in this country, you know, you can learn from that, right? Just don't copy it, but just take those principles. Yeah. Find really tough kids. Encourage them to have a high work rate. And once they do those two things, as a coach, you can then kind of tinker with stuff and add your own flavor to it. But those two things are non-negotiable: the work rate and the toughness, right? And that resilience to overcome everything. And I think you're going to see that in this fight above all else. And that's going to be the beauty of it. It's just going to see two guys who will put it all on the line, because that's what pride is. Like, men's men is how you describe those two, isn't it? Just men's men, the sort of people you can imagine just out in the back chopping wood for a fire, making furniture, you know, simple life. You know, unlike what we have here. So co-main event will be Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker. Now this is intriguing. This is a fight that makes sense to me. Daniel's just won his world title against Anthony Joshua. And look, for the rounds that he boxed, there's some fire that he had to go through psychologically, which was brilliant, right? But now he's in with Joe Parker. This is what you do as a world champion. Like, you get that, what I call opportunity density, where he's gone from, like, I mean, he's fought guys like Usyk, Miller, Joshua, now he's fighting Parker. If he wins that, he's probably going to fight Usyk again. And you're looking at that run going, that's elite level. I mean, they're elite level challenges you're taking on. And people go, oh, I can't believe he's saying that. But that's top of the table talk right there. That's not Tyson Fury fighting Schwartz and Wilder. That's, you know, you're putting yourself in harm's way. And credit to Daniel Dubois and his team for taking this route, because this is how you become great. Like, a large chunk of becoming great is who you fought. Don't forget, Marvin Hagler lost to Sugar Ray Leonard, but he's still great. Don't forget, Duran lost to and he lost to Marvin Hagler. And he lost the second time to Sugar Ray Leonard. Roberto Duran is still great because he was in that conversation, which Dubois is trying to be right now. And it's a resurgent Joseph Parker, and people will say, is it down to Dr. Oz? I don't know. But here's what Parker has now that I don't think he had before. Work rate. They've stripped down Joe Parker's game. And Joe Parker is just a flurry guy now. Yeah. And he knows that if you're not a hard-working heavyweight, he can land those shots at will. I think he's going to fight against Daniel. Daniel's a hard-working heavyweight. And when Daniel hits you, everything, your power bar drops with every punch. So how many of Dubois' shots does he want to take? Because remember, Zhang was slapping him all about the ring for the first 4 rounds. Zhang was really punishing him. Now imagine Daniel can do that for 10 of those 12 rounds. When do you pull Joe Parker out the fight? If Daniel can do that for 10 out of 12 rounds, I think you have to. And if you're Daniel Dubois, that's what you're trying to do to Joseph Parker. Because we keep hearing that this Joseph Parker is better than the version that fought Joshua. So if you stop him, that's the kudos. That's the respect. That's the validation. You are a world champion. Now go and get the rest of those belts. But in terms of how that fight goes, I just think Daniel's too technically sound. Parker struggled against Joyce. Joyce wasn't the most technically sound, but Joe could keep him straight for long enough to discourage Joseph Parker. And we'll hear excuses about why Parker wasn't ready, but there's nothing he could have done against that Joe Joyce. There's absolutely nothing he could have done. We're applauding him for Wilder and Zhang, but Zhang was having his way till Zhang's tank ran empty, and Wilder was never the most active guy, and Malik Scott is basically shredding his talent with every training camp. So I think Parker's best hope is that Daniel's got no engine, and Daniel comes in flat, and he can outwork him, right? And he's going to hope that if he can throw enough punches in the first half of the fight, he can trouble Daniel mentally. I do think that Andy Lee's there going, we can make Dubois quit. I'm like, I don't know if you can. Now that he's got that world title, now that he's the man, I think Daniel will box differently. And as long as he just keeps it really simple, 1-2 move, 1-2 move. If those two punches connect, Jeff Parker can't take many more of those because they'll just bust him up. And this is when you got to factor in the mileage Parker's had. I mean, like, hurt badly by Joe Joyce. Bullied for a bit by Joshua, although people read that fight differently. Got dropped by Dillian. So we know that it's there, right? This idea that he's this bulletproof guy, we know he's not. So I think if Daniel keeps it to the 1-2s, bit of movement, nice, good defensive discipline, like he did against Joshua, just don't get hit with silly shots. He'll grind Joe Parker down, and then there'll be a left hook or left uppercut. For me, that will be the end of the fight. That's the shot I'm looking for from Daniel, that left hook or left uppercut where he can just uncork it on a tired Joseph Parker, and then Parker's going to have to get up off that canvas. And it's like, oh, how much more of this do you want to take? So while I'm more than confident that Dubois will win, we have to give Parker credit because Parker's now becoming the new Tesoro, isn't he? He's that guy that will always rebuild himself because his fundamentals are sound. He's a tough man. He's a tough man that comes to fight. The fans will love him for that, and he'll always get chances. And if you're not on your game, he'll expose you. So I think that sort of thing is good for boxing, the fact that he can always rebound and come back. But I think this is a Daniel we thought we'd be seeing a few years ago. And I think now that he's won that title, the monkey's off his back. He's boxing for fun now. Like he can enjoy his boxing because he'll always be known as a world champion. And yeah, so that's a fight I'm really looking forward to watching. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I think that's going to be a really good fight. Next fight to talk about is probably Carlos Adames versus Hamza Shiraz, right? Because this is like the payoff for the pet project. So it's for the world title. I think it's the WBC. Just always intrigued why, Denzel has to wait this long, but it is what it is. So, how do you put it? Everything kind of favors Shiraz. Like if you just looked at them, you'd go, Hamza Shiraz is 6'3", like a legit 6'3". Good wingspan on him. He's learning how to box long now. So really trying to get that extension and whipping his shots. All that stuff is good. And we've seen him look good against people, right? He's made British people look ordinary. Here's the big difference. Carlos Adames has been through it to get to this point. I know people talk about his loss to Patrick Teixeira and stuff, but he's fought guys like Deverenchenko. I think he fought Jerry Rock Williams and Terrell Gausha. These are all good guys, like good guys that will expose someone that's not at the level. And so he's shown he's at this level. I don't think Shiraz has been through those trials and tribulations. That's not to say that he couldn't. He hasn't. So psychologically, when you're thinking about it, what's it going to be like if it gets rough in there? Let's say Hamza hits him on the top of the head, hurts his hand. Now you've got to dig in. Now you've got to show you're tough when you haven't had to before. Now you've got to show you're tough. You've got to overcome someone who will come to know you. And we're going to find out if he's got that. It's not he hasn't got it. We don't know. But he's going to have to show it. Because Adames has shown it. Now, it could all flip around by the way, and Hamza Shiraz could do him in the round, or what we worried about. But I'm not so sure that's going to happen. I think this is going to be a legit world title shot. And I think as a result of that, Hamza Shiraz is going to have to be the best version of him, and hope that's good enough. But it comes back to this point we talk about when it comes to British boxing. We do everything we can to keep our guys out of harm's way. Like, we don't let anything get in the way of a world title shot. Not progression, not development, not skill acquisition, nothing. We will go from here to a world title shot with as little damage taken as possible. And what happens when you get to that world title level? You see nothing that goes on in that ring. You're not prepared for it. You're not prepared to have your foot stood on. You're not prepared to have an elbow land on your forearm. You're not prepared to have someone, rub their thumb in your eye. And all these sorts of things that will happen in that ring. And if you're not prepared for them, they'll throw you off. Also, what happens when you hit someone with your best shot and you nod and come forward? Are you prepared for all of these things? You normally want to prepare for those before you get to the world title shot. But here's the thing. We've seen Shiraz drop from punches where we're like, I'm not sure that should have dropped it. So we're going to find out a lot, is what I can say. Right? We're going to find out whether this is a coronation or this was a cash out. I don't know which one it is. I can't pretend to judge, and I'm not going to judge. But we are going to find out. And fair play, like if Shiraz does make it happen, that's going to be huge for the UK. If he doesn't, he can fight Denzel. It'll be huge for the UK. So he's really in a no-lose position at this point. And for Adamesh, this is the chance for him to announce himself to the wider world. So I'm happy that fight's happening. I think it's going to be a good fight. I might bottle that one and call that a 50-50. But I'll just lean slightly towards Adamesh in that one. But let's see who the best in favour is, actually. Then we've got Vergil Ortiz Jr. versus Israel Madrimov. This might be where the surprise comes, in my opinion. And I can't tell you why. I just have a feeling Madrimov is better than people are giving him credit for. And he's got that, like I said, Eastern European style. They're tough and they can work. And so is Ortiz the sort of guy that wants that? If he wants that, if he's like, I want to be tested. If his attitude is, I need to be tested, I want to be in those deep waters to show people I can do this, then it's his fight to win. If he's just there to pick up money and a title, Madrimov could expose him. But that's the one I'd mark as mine. Could be a surprise here. Shakur Stevenson versus Floyd Schofield. I'm not mad with this fight. I know people want to complain about who Floyd Schofield is, but the kid's 18 and 0. Right? Simple as that. The kid's 18 and 0. If he's not ready for Shakur Stevenson, I'm not saying ready for a top tape. I'm saying if he's not ready for Shakur Stevenson, it's going to be rough. But he hasn't had that preparation. He probably wouldn't have taken this one if he had a choice. But when these opportunities come, take them. Let's find out if you're in that ballpark. Even if you lose, we want to know that you're in that ballpark. What can't happen is you get completely outclassed. If you get outclassed and your mates look stupid, ankles get twisted up and stuff, you're not looking good for your old man, unfortunately. But for that one, I'll back Shakur. I think Shakur on a one-sided performance. But if Schofield can look good in that, he can come back. And Joshua Buatsi versus Callum Smith. Now, I haven't been very high on Buatsi, but I want to give him credit because the guy's still unbeaten. Yes, he's the world British champion, but he still managed to avoid all the landmines that could have been there. Which, I don't know if that's a damning indictment on British boxing or not, but against Callum Smith, I don't think he'll have any problems. I don't see it. Like, if Craig Richards couldn't do it, Callum Smith can't do it. I promise you that. Yeah, no. Not 175. And like I said, Callum Smith is just famous for beating a one-armed George Groves. This is a cash out for Callum Smith. He's not built for it. He's not built for it. I think Buatsi's work rate will start to get to Callum Smith at some point, and that'll be a wrap for him. And good servant to British boxing, but I think his moment's gone. Like him and his brother Beefy, hanging in there, aren't they? Every last drop of that oil money they can get, they're there for. And I get it because you're a long time retired, so why not? But this is kind of the fight where I'm like, I don't know if we needed this on the card. I would have been okay without this on the card. And then look, Brad Rear's on there. Good luck to Brad. So this is like, good luck to him, man. He's doing a comeback trail since he lost to Tyler Denny. I know he fought Adam Heffel and all this sort of stuff, but they're spinning the card out, aren't they? And we've got to talk about Zhang versus Caballero. If you're Caballero, right, and Caballero's got decent mobility, you just wait for Zhang to get tired, and then you can unload on him. The only risk to Caballero winning this is that I think Caballero's a southpaw, right? And Zhang's a southpaw. So that might make it easier for Zhang to land his money punches. I'm not saying it will be, but it can make it easier. Now, we know with Zhang there's no gas tank. So Gile Zhang's like, I need this done in under 6. If I can put him down a couple of times, then we're cool. But easier said than done. Like Caball's shown that he's tenacious, he's tough, horrible to be in with. But Zhang's also shown he can figure out awkward people. I mean, fundamentally sound. Mobile in a way that doesn't get enough credit, but he's mobile enough that he can get out the way of stuff when he's got energy. When he's got no energy, he's just eating shots. So he's got to get it done early. I think Caball could kind of coast this one to a 12-round decision. But yeah, for me, that's the whole card. I don't even know what I'm looking forward to seeing this week. So this fight will be interesting because Turkey always seems to have a surprise for us, doesn't it? There's always something that happens this week where we're just like, oh, they've done that. So let's see what happens. It's going to be really interesting because we're getting close to that kind of Queensberry TNT divorce and migration to the zone. So it's going to be really interesting when Frank Warren starts becoming more and more of a DAZN voice. And what will that do for Eddie? Because for a long time, Eddie was, remember, you only go on DAZN, you got to go through me. Frank was like, we ain't going to do that. So that dynamic is going to be interesting. Outside of that, I think we're just going to get the usual collection of kind of idiots. But I do want to say one thing though. Every time you see these big events, these huge events, you look and you go, that's Dev Samuel. I think Dev's one of the few people who has traversed what I call the banter era of boxing. Like, stuff that we were doing New Age back in the day. And then he's in the kind of gilded new world of Saudi Arabian boxing. And he's kind of grown through it. I don't think of anyone else who's made that journey. I don't think there is. Like, people talk about Ade. Ade was just... Ade was a dude in the green chair. No strong opinions. And that's what got him on Sky, and that's what got him on the zone. And I'm happy for him because if that was his career ambition, and he pulled it off. But he's not part of that era. He's not part of the era that gave life to fan created content the way some of us did. But I'm happy because Dev's from that era in terms of being someone who was engaged in the content back then, and he's gone all the way over. I think the same about Umar Ahmed as well, where they've gone from that kind of not afraid to speak truth to power, poke holes in authority, and now they're in the system. And so always sensitized when you see those guys up there. So credit to them. But no, look, let's enjoy it. I'll give my takes on it. Let's see what happens. But this time next week, boxing will be in a completely different space, and I'd expect we will hear more news about AJ probably by Sunday. And I'm sure it won't be that he's fighting Daniel Dubois. And on that note, I'll say take care.
Well, that was Terry with his Terry's Take 108, I think, is it? Enjoyed that. Speaks very elegantly. You can see he speaks a little bit more posher than me because he's educated, isn't he? Whereas me, I'm an egger, aren't I? I'm a bit of a 10 and 22 journeyman going up against a pound for pounder like Floyd Mayweather, Terry Anna. But we're both very similar in our opinions on boxing. It's just that, like I said, Terry can word it a bit differently. Be like Simon Cowell, but he's got bigger nuts than Simon Cowell, Terry. So, okie dokie. Thanks for liking and subscribing and leaving a comment. Porky's Corner will return on Tuesday afternoon when I'm going to get that one straight out because Cameron, who people keep saying don't exist, his company's called Cam.sign. He's been with me over 5 years. Plenty of people in the industry have met him. So the prick that says this is an invention in a fantasy in my imagination, I'm sure Cameron probably likes that. If you go onto Porky's International, our sister channel, there's a cricket video on there. He does all the narrating on there. But like I said, people in the industry have met him, Jenny Sobson, people like that. So that's all I'm bothered about. All right. But like I said, people on social media, they know everything, don't they? They're the judge and jury. They're the people hiding behind a keyboard. Plenty rattle, but nothing to say once I say, well, come on board and say your bit. Or like when this goes out now, there'll be vile comments regarding Terry. And I always say, well, if you feel that strongly about it, come from behind your keyboard. Let's see what you've got to say. I'll even give you opportunity to hide behind a thumbnail picture like I am today, because I've just got in and I can't be asked sticking my face in front of a camera. So, all right. So that's about it. Okie dokie. One piece out. Max, I hope you're well, mate. Pop, pop, bang. Oh, can I just say what bad taste it were from Dave Caldwell, Bombay Dave, and Tony the Bell End Bellew to come out on their social media saying Joe Gallagher's not a friend and, you know, they're not a fan and that, and but they wish him all the best. Why not just not say anything? All right. Why not just not say anything? All right. That's about it, really. Go on, peace out.